Scott Marlin, doing another video today for you guys. This one's going to cover some of the processor's information, especially since we know that everything that uses electricity creates heat. So a big factor in using a processor and taking care of your processor is making sure that it's releasing that heat appropriately, so it doesn't overheat and cause damage to the processor, or lose data, destroy your motherboard, and what have you. Inside the case for this one, it's really kind of cool. It has the shroud that it fits over the heatsink, and so the way that you remove that heat from the processor is on top of the processor. You'll have some thermal compound that draws heat out of the processor, and the thermal compound also helps to prevent like little air gaps and bubbles that don't draw the heat away very well. All that heat will transfer through the thermal compound into your heatsink. This one's made of aluminum, and all it does really is it takes that heat, distributes it up these tines. So as these tines heat, your fan will spin and basically create wind and blow over the hot tines to cool them. So that heat's coming up and then it gets dispersed by the fan. And that's the primary way you'll see that a processor is kept cool, with just thermal compound, a heatsink, and then a fan directly blowing on it. There are some that are liquid cooled, and I'll try to get into that into another video. I don't really have a lot of time to deal with it right now in this video, so we're just going to focus on the basics. For this motherboard, we have a PGA, a pin grid array 478 socket type. It's housing this Intel Pentium 4 processor. You can see that PGA pin grid array, little pins that fit down into that socket. Basically, so your processor is kind of like the brains of your computer. It does all of the operations. Other key components like the RAM and stuff, they'll transfer data around, but the processor is what actually does all the work. So that's, I didn't really show how to remove the processor. I'll show how to reinstall it. Removing it's just kind of reverse the process. So most of these pin grid arrays, you just line them up and they just kind of fall down into place. You don't want to use any force. Any force will bend those pins and pretty much make the processor useless. For these nice pin grid arrays, you have this little lever, so you don't really have to use any force putting the processor in. This lever will adjust that tension and kind of squeeze the processor down in for a good solid connection. So to remove it, you just lift that lever and it slides right out nice and easy. You should not have to use any force. And then reinstall the heatsink. You guys probably noticed that there wasn't really any thermal compound on it. I've cleaned it off just so I could go through without getting thermal compound everywhere. It makes a mess. So for the video, I went ahead and removed it and cleaned it up. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave me some comments. Other than that, I will see you in my next video.